morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity. Next, I would like to give our motion for today. Our motion for today is should Keith's son win the case where Keith's cancer cells have been used by Professor Haley with permission to carry out research. I repeat again, to the opposition team, with permission to carry out research. The definition of motion is research which is the systematic investigation into the study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. Permission is the action of officially allowing someone to do a particular thing with consent or authorization. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to explain first that in this case there are two different things, namely carrying out research with permission and selling the results of the research without permission, where Professor Haley did not get Keith's permission to sell the results of his research. Here we will be supporting Keith because his rights were not respected in this case. He was not asked for his permission or his permission from his family that they could sell the product that was received through the research. I will pass it to the opposition team.
Okay, good evening everyone. Now understand from the government's case, they are defining the motion in a very, honestly, very utopian manner, in which they believe that consent is fully derived and fully conditional. So understand that Keith, as a cancer patient, was lying on his deathbed, hoping that at least with a glimmer of hope that Dr. Haley would be able to find a cure. And in the end, he did find a cure under the research that was contributed by Keith in donating his cells, etc. And although it was unfortunate that Keith had passed before the results were out, it was still indisputable that Dr. Haley successfully found the cure for cancer. Is that not true? Now this, how we're going to weigh our argument is that we're going to weigh based on the greater good or the greater of someone's emotional or consensual information. Now, first of all, Keith gave Dr. Haley the consent to research. However, of course, like you mentioned, there was no mention of commercial purposes. There was no mention of purposes outside of the research. However, that does not restrict Dr. Haley to not make money out of his successful research of curing people. Now, understand the weight of this and urgency of this motion today. Now, Dr. Haley has found a cure for cancer, a sickness that has killed so millions of people all throughout the years, and with this cure, it will be able to save so many more people. And what you're focusing now, you're focusing on the commercial purposes, you're focusing on the financial purposes of this without considering the greater good, without considering that the lives and rights of these people to live a good life with the research results that were achieved by Dr. Haley using Keith's contributions. Now understand that in our modern world, if Dr. Haley had not made a patent or have not charged a certain amount for the patents for this cancer cure, pharmaceutical companies would swoop in, voucher out, and target this basically miraculous formula and result. Just like the case with insulin in the modern day, the founder and creator created insulin and sold it at a patent of $1, in which pharmaceutical companies swooped in and took and monopolized the insulin industry and they were able to do so easily because of the low price. Now, by putting a certain price and amount on the cure for cancer, like literally the cure for cancer that can save millions and millions of lives on the daily, Dr. Haley is in a way protecting the rights and well-being of the people. Back to you, Said.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. We, the government teams, still believe that Keith's fund should win this case because, first, commercialization of research without consent is wrong. Keith did not give consent about commercialization. I repeat, he did not give consent about the commercialization. Once Keith had passed away, the doctor should have gotten the consent of the patient's legitimate kin before letting Professor Zaidi commercialize it. This itself goes against the Malaysia and Medical Association, in which they have warned doctors to not promote their practice, attempt to gain publicity, and also indulge in self-promotion. Doctors all around the world are required to keep the patient's information confidential, and whatever information that can be disclosed must be consented to. What Professor Zaidi did is not ethical, as it violates the ethical principles of informed consent and respect for the individual's right. It undermines the trust between researchers and participants, potentially deterring future participations in the researches. Keith's sons have all rights to receive reparation and explanation from the doctor and Professor Zaidi due to and about this lack of consent. This case in itself would make the general public feel of the lack of transparency in the medical field. The lack of transparency causes distrust among the general public towards the medical industry and might cause an uproar about the lack of consent as well. So, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, commercializing research without consent, as seen in the case of Keith, is ethically wrong. It violates principles of informed consent, undermines trust, and may deter future participation. The doctor and Professor Zaidi should have obtained consent from Keith's next of kin before commercializing the research. This lack of consent not only warrants reparations for Keith's sons, but also raises concerns about transparency and trust in the medical field. Upholding ethical principles and respecting individual rights are crucial to maintain the integrity of research and public trust.
So my question is that since the government still keep mentioning about the privacy leakage and also the transparency, but in this case, I need to remember again the doctor become well known is because of his research result, is not because of the leakage of the patients that willing to give his cancer cells about that. And he well known in his name with not getting because of I use this person's cell so I can get this cure. So I think your point of view is wrong. And the other thing is that the rights of the lack of consent in this research purpose. Yes, it does. The patient does give the consent to the doctor to do the research, but it's not in the commercial purposes which is mentioned by the government, and I do support that. Our side, which is that the cure can help that thousands and millions of people. And for example, even though the donorship is also true, passing through the billions of the experiment, then they can get one successful experiment. If in this case, isn't that because of one person, so we did a successful thing? Is too over of it? So my point of view is that this is not the leakage of the patients, and this is not for the commercial use. If it's for the commercial use, the cure will be chopped on the doctor's name. Then how about yours opinion?
So, good morning, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I would like to reform that we, the government team, believe that the statement that Keith's son should win in this case. To answer your question, we mentioned about unethical manners, not information leakage. And for the information, definitely consent is very, very important, because if you don't have a voice consent from a legitimate kin, then that means you're going against the ethical manners, ethical purposes in the medical field. For let's say example, I don't want to resuscitate my father when he's at his deathbed, So if the doctors, they try to resuscitate the patient's parents or relatives have already given consent about not resuscitating. But if the doctor continues to resuscitate, then he's going against their consent. Get it? Okay. So our first speaker, to conclude, our first speaker spoke to you about the motion of today, which is whether Keith's son should win this case regarding the use of Keith's cancer cell by Professor Haley for research without permission granted. Okay. The issue at hand is the unauthorized sale of research finding without Keith's consent, okay, or his legitimate Keith's consent. We support Keith's son's claim that his father's rights were violated, and as he and his family were not consulted about the sale of this research product or even consented to it. Okay. Our second speaker spoke about how commercialization of research without consent is unequivocally wrong. In the case of Keith, it is evident that he did not provide consent for the commercialization of his research, and the doctor should have obtained consent from Keith's legitimate next team before allowing Professor Haley to commercialize this after Keith's passing. Yes, it may save a lot of people, but the thing is, consent is still important. Let's say if I can save 1 billion people after I rape you, would I still rape you? You know? Okay. This action directly contradicts the guidelines set by the MMA, which is Malaysian Medical Association, which cautions against doctors promoting their practices, seeking publicity, or engaging in self-promotion. Furthermore, doctors worldwide are bound by the obligation to maintain patient confidentiality and also should only disclose information with proper consent. Professor Haley's information in this case are unethical as they violate the principles of informed consent and respect for individuals' rights. This breeds trust between researchers and participants for the potential to deter future participations in research endeavors. Because if, let's say the researchers, they can find a cure for something, but they don't accredit a certain amount of something to the patient or the participants of the research, then that means there will be an uproar. Okay? There will be distrust. There should be a certain contract to this, but there is none. There should be a certain consent to this, but there is none. Okay. Not only that, Keith's son has every right to seek reparation, which is payment or anything at all, and an explanation from the doctor and Professor Haley due to the lack of consent in this situation. This case highlights the importance of transparency in medical field, and lack of transparency not only erodes public trust in the medical industry, but also raises concern about the overall consent process. Such issues can lead to public outrage and demand for greater transparency and consent practices within the field. It is crucial to uphold ethical principles such as informed consent, respect for privacy, and transparent practices to foster trust, protect individual rights, and maintain the integrity of research process. So it is all from me. Thank you.
Coming back from opposition, we do not believe that Keith's son has a right to win in this lawsuit at all. Now, first of all, I'm going to go into some certain rebuttals to the government's case. Now, first of all, you mentioned the credit to the patient, but then you come around and tell me about transparency, about the consent of information, about privacy. That's very hypocritical in which you want to protect the information of the family, of the patient, and yet you come around and tell me that you should give credit to the patient and the family. Why do you believe that? So why do you believe that you are able to protect the privacy? You are able to keep, because understand that even in Malaysia, a doctor to patient confidentiality is very important, and by leaking it is also, and by giving credit to that patient directly, you are also violating the medical ethics that you are so adamant on. Now back to the point of unethical. Do you believe that as a doctor, as a researcher, it is more ethical to focus on the research and try to protect this as much as possible, or to protect the consent and transparency of one single individual which took part in a research that took results and information from millions and thousands and probably millions of other patients? Then in that case, in your world, do we need to give credit to all of those patients, to give remuneration, compensation to all of patients who were involved in the years and years of continuous research in curing cancer. Because understand that cancer is a very long and prevalent issue and disease in society. And if you were to want to talk about transparency, consent, ethical, etc., you would have to consider so many points of view for the one research that means almost everything to around 1/3 of the world. Now, another rebuttal to your case is about the right of ownership of the research. In your work, you are basically telling me that as a doctor, as a researcher, as a professor even, they do not have the right to self-promote. Understand that right now he is not really self-promoting. He literally found the cure for cancer, and you're telling me that he does not have the right to talk about it at all. And right now you're saying that in your work, the work that you are painting for me right now, you are saying that all of the doctors, all of the researchers, no matter how great their contributions to science are, they do not have the right to claim and self-promote and commercialize their research simply based on the fact that it is unethical. Then in that case, how do you really define unethical? How do you really define consent? How do you really define transparency in the world of in the medical industry, where you want to protect the rights and information of the patient, yet you want to credit to them? And in this case, there's a very big contradiction in the government case entirely. And even from the perspective of Keith's son, there's really no incentive for him to go into a lawsuit at all, unless he himself were blinded by this greed and monetization of this research as well. He heard that his father donated his cells for research. He heard that the research was successful. He heard that the research got money, and now the researcher who did it is rich. Now, in this case, would you have to dig up every kin of every patient that donated their cells to cancer in a really big renowned hospital and hunt them all down for consent for this release, for the release of this research and for the consent of this commercialization at all? Then in that case, would it not be unethical itself that this research, that this cure for cancer is not released at all because lack of time, because the procedures are too long, because of the processes that the government is trying to impose on this whole motion entirely? Now, with that, I rest my case, and again, let me reiterate to the panel that Keith's son does not have a right to win this lawsuit, nor does he have a right to a lawsuit at all. Thank you, and okay, so now for the conclusion. Is that conclusion?
We are done with the conclusion and we are done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.